in the beautiful St. Mary's Assumption Church. This parish began in 1842 when Redemptorist priest Peter Schackert came down from Pittsburgh on a fundraising mission to New Orleans. Bishop Antoine Blanc asked him to stay and minister to the German-speaking population here, and so he came to what was then called the city of Lafayette. It wouldn't become a part of New Orleans for another 10 years, and founded the parish in 1843. Originally, Mass was held in Kaiser's Hall, which was Saturday night a dance hall, and by Sunday morning had been transformed into a church. Soon they built a small church to be the initial St. Mary's Assumption Church. It was 90 feet by 40 feet, so home plate to first base in size, and that was the home for Mass for many years. The homilies were said in German for most of the Masses, but at 8 a.m. Mass on Sundays, every week it alternated between French and English, as there were other populations of immigrants here in this area. The church soon became too small, and so work was begun in 1858 on the present St. Mary's Assumption. On the same day that they laid the cornerstone for this church, they were consecrating and completing St. Alphonsus Church right across the street for the English-speaking Irish Catholics. And then just down the block was Notre Dame de Bon Secours, the church for the French-speaking Catholics. So all told at one time, on this very spot, there were 3 Catholic churches, 5 Catholic schools, and 2 Catholic orphanages. The area was known as Ecclesiastical Square, and surely was one of the most intensely Catholic blocks in all of Christendom. The St. Mary's Assumption Church was completed by 1860. Bricks were brought down the river on a barge and then brought by cart almost all the way to the church, but the carts couldn't quite reach the church, so the women of the parish would load the bricks in their aprons and carry them through the muddy street to the church so that it could be completed. The interior furnishings date from the 1860s and the 1870s. The pulpit was hand-carved and first used in 1861, and the high altar was completed in 1874. Also in the 1870s, the image of Our Lady of Perpetual Help, which is a copy of the image entrusted to the Redemptorists in Rome, was installed in the church. In the height of the Great Depression, almost 30,000 people would come to this church for the devotions to Our Lady of Perpetual Help, such that the public transit system had to be reorganized to accommodate the large crowds coming to this area. By the 1920s, the 3 churches were merged into one, and St. Alphonsus became the primary church for this parish. But then as hurricanes damaged different churches over the years, the use of the 2 buildings switched back and forth. And today, St. Mary's Assumption Parish, this church is the church for the parish, and St. Alphonsus is used primarily as a cultural center across the street. Importantly, in this church, we have the relics of Blessed Francis Xavier Seelos, one of our local homegrown saints, or so we hope. He was a Redemptorist priest who came to New Orleans after turning down the opportunity to be the Bishop of Pittsburgh. And he arrived in 1866 and lived here for only about a year because he ministered to people who were suffering in the yellow fever epidemic and eventually succumbed to the disease himself. So almost a martyr of sorts for undertaking this dangerous ministry and eventually dying for it, all through his faith. So the faithful have prayed through his intercession for miracles of healing, many of which have been granted. And so in the year 2000, Pope John Paul the Great made Blessed Francis Xavier Seelos a blessed. He beatified him, and we are hopeful and we continue to pray that he will be canonized and made the first saint of our local Catholic Church here in New Orleans. So his relics are housed just behind the altar, and there's a museum with many artifacts from his life, and the story is told of his life in a building just across the street. So this is the beautiful St. Mary's Assumption Church.